Good morning, all the early birds, to the EOFS and OpenSFS breakfast meeting. It's, I would say, almost tradition that we meet during ISC at this very early hour of the day to look back what happened last year in our approach to work on an always better I/O environment and master community. So we had quite a challenging year, but I'm very pleased to say you see at least two things going on right now in the market. Number one, the fact that my friend Steve Sims from OpenSFS and me on behalf of EOFS did the invitation for this breakfast meeting, but also for our joint booth, shows that OpenSFS and EOFS, the two community platforms, are working very, very well together. Our spirit is the same, to strengthen community, to work on Luster, to work on parallel I/O systems. And we know that community counts very much. On the other hand, we are working very, very well with the industry involved in the development, especially with Intel, especially with Cyratex, Seagate. And in this circumstance, it's also my pleasure to announce that what we said at LUG in Miami earlier this year happens. We are in the middle of our negotiations, very positive one, for the transition of Luster.org to OpenSFS and EOFS in a joint ownership. I think this is a very, very welcome step by Seagate and Cyratex to strengthen community. So thank you so much for that again. And on the other hand, we want to strengthen and we want to support that spirit of community on one hand side, users, developers, and industry on the other side. Work jointly together in this community and industry partnership, as we call it. So I wish you an interesting breakfast meeting. Thank you so much for everybody joining in this morning. And I hand over to my friend and partner, Stephen Sims from OpenSFS.
Good morning. My name is Steve Sims. I'm what they call the Community Board Representative for OpenSFS. In some ways, I guess that means that I'm the only person that's been elected to the board because I represent the entire community. And I guess first I want to say thank you so much for having us here. It's always a pleasure to be at ISC. I guess, you know, from the board and from each and every member of OpenSFS, I'd like to send greetings. We're very pleased to be partners with EOFS. I think that, as Hugo says, we're very interested in strengthening the community. At this moment, I would really like to plug involvement with OpenSFS. We solicit talks for the LUG, and we would really love to get abstracts from you people. Each and every one of you is likely doing something particularly interesting, or at least interesting for you. And certainly at the LUG forum, or in the OpenSFS working groups, we would love to hear what you're up to and see the ways that we can help support you, as well as the members of our community in the United States. In terms of OpenSFS's future plans, they align directly with what Hugo's saying. We really need to strengthen the community at this time. I think that for a time, Luster's future was in question. I think that that time is passing. It's great to see all of them here. In terms of numbers, people willing to get up at ridiculously early and offer their thoughts. I'm too long-winded. You can ask anybody that knows me, so I'm going to stop now. And again, you know, thank Hugo and Frank. So enjoy what follows. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Steve. And now I hand over to Frank Bethke Frank, again, thank you so much for doing that moderation and the preparation. Also, thank you so much to the panelists for showing up. And one thing is for sure, whenever Frank is the lead and the head of such a panel, it's going to be a very tough and a very, very vibrant and a very challenging one. So enjoy it. Thank you.
I'm not that bad, so try to be very nice. Thank you, Hugo. So just to get started, a few words on the structure, and what I want to do is let the audience know there's a certain structure here. The most important group, I think, is the users of Lost. Because without users, this whole event and the whole product doesn't make sense. And I'd like to come back to this nice discussion we had a year ago, where one representative at the end said, yeah, the product would be fine and in much better shape, very stable, without all those user requests. So, and at that moment I had to say, we always had that assumption that the real problem is the end user. Products would be in much better shape without users using it. So, so much to get started. What we have inherited from that session a year ago is the structure you're seeing here. And I just said the most important group is the end user. And you see the end users lined up here at the left side. And let me just introduce them shortly by name and mention the institution they are with. So this is Thomas Ludwig on the left side. He represents the German Climate Research Center. The next one, also a user, is Klaus Wolkersdorfer, and he represents the Jülich Supercomputing Center. Then we have a new member here on the panel. I'm very, very pleased to have you here. It's Henrik Olsen, and that is interesting because they actually implemented Luster on their own at the site, and that's exactly what I also wanted. Or a site with such a setup, I wanted definitely to be represented here. To the right, Stephen Sims, who is acting here in a double role as a representative of OpenSFS, but also he's from Indiana University representing an end user, right? Yes. Now, we have a slightly different group represented here as well. Aurélien Degremont is from CA in France. They are a heavy Luster user, but at the same time, they contribute and develop features that hopefully will enhance Luster and hopefully get integrated. And then we move to Ken Claffey.
That's okay. Come to mind,
Sorry?
Nice. Yes. Good job. So,
He came on behalf of Ken.
yeah, Ken unfortunately is having a kid. Well, his wife is, but he feels the pain as much as she does. He couldn't make it.
Okay, so, but you always text.
Yes.
What we need to do is, for the audience, get the name here corrected. And would you just do that? Yeah, that is important. So here we are at the real developers, because they do something, and of course they offer products. And the same is true for that small company, Intel, Brent Goddard, and most of you know they are also the principal owner of the source tree. And then what is also new from the session we had last year, because OpenSFS, or the European Open File System Organization, there's this term open in it. So for that reason, it should be open also to alternative file systems, and for that reason we have invited Franz Freund, who is basically the key developer initiator of the product called the Fraunhofer file system, and now it's got renamed BGFS, B Global File System. And then finally, looking even further out to the future, and maybe it's not exactly just a file system, we have Julian Kunkel here, who is also with the German Climate Research Center, but is heavily involved with a product called E10. And so instead of having you all saying something here and introduce yourself, we did it the quick way, and what I'd like to do now is go all the way back, because Franz and Julian will have the final statements to show you alternatives and an outlook to the future. And I'd like to start with Brent and ask Brent, what has changed from your perspective, and hopefully what is better, since we met here, and then continue. So a quick update, what has changed in Luster, and for Luster as the product, and what is the outlook. Of course, you are free to add remarks on the Luster community as an organization. Brent.
So the Luster source tree is of course moving forward, and there's additional features added. I'm more on the business side these days, although I used to type code. What I see happening in the marketplace is there's a dramatic rise of interest, what I would call outside of high performance computing. Big data industry, people are realizing that there's HPC technologies that they can bring to bear on their problems. And I've been talking about this for several years, and I think there's this opportunity. As we've gotten into Intel and gotten more credibility around the technology, it's starting to gel, and there's much more interest about using this technology in what those of us in HPC would call enterprise environments. So that, I believe, points to increasing the size of the pie for all of the vendors who play with these sorts of technologies. So I think it's a good sign.
Thanks. Torben.
So, what's happened since last time? Well, obviously, we no longer Cyrotex, we now Seagate, which is, again, a major shift in the marketplace, where we have one of the biggest players in the storage business suddenly getting into file systems and solutions and some other things. For us as Cyrotex, this is a great thing, because now we actually can control the entire chain from disk drivers to the file system and everything in between. However, to mimic what Brent said, this also opens us up to new markets where, for instance, some of the big players in the community like Yahoo and Google, etc., that always did their own things, now starting to talk to vendors like Seagate, etc., about getting more enterprise-like solutions. They may not be Luster-based, but there's so much similarity between the I/O patterns they have and the I/O pattern we find in HPC that the crossover or the overlap between these two areas are not that small. It's really significant. And we're also seeing that driving some of the decisions about starting looking at alternative file systems for specific uses where Luster might not be the best fit, where some other file system is perhaps a better fit, but using the same approach to create enterprise-ready file systems, enterprise-ready solutions with all the support needed, all the deliverables needed, etc., to be able to perform at those scales. So for us, it's a learning period at the moment. We're seeing new requirements coming out. Some of them, those requirements are definitely applicable to Luster, but requires us to rethink how we deploy things, how we develop things. I mean, anyone ever heard about a Luster file system with 5 nines? Well, we have that mandate now to create such a file system that actually can fulfill 5 nines, less than half an hour downtime per year, which is a pipe dream in certain cases, but we have to do it sooner or later. And we think that will just be the benefit for an entire community of getting that kind of security. So,
Would you just add, Torben, the 5 nines? I'm not 100% sure that all of the audience are familiar with what the meaning is. We know this from system reliability.
Exactly. But from a file system reliability and availability, a file system that has 5 nines pretty much needs to have no more than 34-minute unplanned downtime per year. So that means it also needs to have very few service windows. Anything and everything on the system has to be fully supported on a live system without creating or requiring downtime. Now that's a challenge. That's a big challenge. Now, we think we can do it. It's going to take time, but we think we can do it with good planning, good hardware, good software, adding extra features into Lustre that will allow it to do smoother failovers, smoother sharing, directing data, what have you. It really changed the game on what Lustre does. I would say some of the users, some of the problematic users who only care about performance, it's probably not seeing this as a positive thing, but as a community, it's all good.
Thanks, Torben. That was a lengthy statement, but it had a lot of content and there's something new here. So your company will do something with Lustre, to sum that up, but you will be also offering Lustre together with hardware as an appliance, correct?
Yeah.
And Brent, Intel, that's my understanding, you will basically drive the source development of Lustre and also continue maintaining the source tree.
So we don't sell any hardware.
Yes.
Despite being Intel, we don't sell any hardware. All we have is the tree and our associated program.
So, for the audience to see, that's an interesting difference here. Now, Aurélien, from your perspective, what has changed? Are there any changes, and for good or for worse, since we met a year ago?
From a site which is using Lustre and a site which is developing and making badges for Lustre, I think the most important news for us since last year is that our contribution, Lustre HSM lining, has been integrated and released in an official Lustre version since end of last year. As it's one of the most important in size and maybe also in functionality, new change in Lustre for a while. So I think that's really something really good for us, and something also really good for Lustre. A lot of people was expecting this feature, and we see since a lot of interest in this and a lot of company integrators which are working on integrating this feature to their product.
So that's a very positive statement, so you're pleased, and that's actually a change because I recall there were some issues a year ago, so we are on at least appears to be on a positive track. Stephen.
Sir.
What is your perspective here? Excuse me. What has changed from your point of view since Supercomputing 13 or ISC'14?
Okay. Indiana University is significantly involved in life sciences. We have a large medical school. We have a lot of folks that are processing genomic data. One of Lustre's shortcomings has consistently been small files and limitations on the metadata server. In the past year, we've seen significant motion with distributed namespace to provide multiple metadata servers to help take that load. I think that one of the exciting things that we've seen, OpenSFS has funded, 4 design projects. We're very much looking forward to the implementation of at least 2 of those. One is a layout enhancement, and the layout enhancement would permit replication. But from our perspective, one of the exciting things is data on the MDT. That way you don't have to make the leap to the object storage server, the object storage target for small files, which bio guys seem to love. it would be wonderful to have that on the MDT so you don't have to skip. And I guess the other piece that's quite exciting for us is we've been doing some development work of our own. I guess we're on the roadmap right now. We've been doing both a UID piece, which would permit your Lustre file system to span administrative domains without having to synchronize your UIDs. For us, this is important. You know, the medical school can mount the file system in their laboratory and just drop their data from the lab and then compute it at the centralized location. And the second development project that we're involved in is a kind of shared key security. Unfortunately, the GSS code had laid dormant for a long time. So we've done some technical debt on that and are making progress to permit us to have a more secure environment to run Lustre without having to shut up.
So, actually, you just confirmed that I put you in the right position as a site that is not only using Lustre, but also doing some development. And so, for that reason, you are closer to the real developers like CA. Now,
I love you too.
now we finally move to the group that are real end users. And let's start with Henrik, because this is a site, the Danish Technical University, that is specifically interesting because it's my understanding you just took basically the code,
Originally,
downloaded it and installed it on whatever
we
hardware
started
felt
out
right.
with Lustre 1.4 because we heard somebody in Sweden used it for the cluster, and apparently it was the thing to do. So we did it.
And you're happy, and it's
We're happy. We're at 189 now. Starting to feel the pain of being tied down to two old kernels. So actually our move towards version 2 will be hardware driven because we don't have hardware support in the same kernels as we have support for 1.8. But apart from that, the thing we've most seen change over the last year is that it's becoming more pervasive. We've used Lustre for more things, mainly for sharing storage to systems that are not HPC, but presents data and results from the HPC. So it's basically, we're expanding what we use it for.
Thanks. Klaus, same question.
Okay, I start with saying what has changed. We have a new test system since nearly a year ago installed in our shop, and we installed the Lustre 2.5 and ZFS. I think the latest version was installed 2 weeks ago actually, and we tried to collect experience with the new version of Lustre over there. Then I have to say what has not changed, and our production supercomputer, the Europa system, is still the old version 1.8.4 running. We have frozen this system. We don't do any updates besides if a major security update comes. And because the life cycle end of the system is supposed to reach in 5 days. But we were not able to install a new successor system, and so we have the planning that we have a successor system for the Europa system, at least in the first phase, installed by the end of the year. And now I have to come over to a not so open file system, namely GPFS, because on our Blue Gene we have two supercomputers in unique running in our blue gene system, GPFS was the only possible solution for us at that time, and so we have a very large GPFS installation, and I can say that since a year ago we installed a new GPFS native rate over there, and we were actually very, very pleased with this installation, especially about the declustered rate feature. It helped us to reduce our rebuild time from 22 hours to 7 minutes, really. This was a major success, actually, because the 22 hours we could not stand any longer, because we have 3 disk failures a week, and so all the I/O performance always was degraded, and so we wanted to have a change. I stopped with telling about the not so open
It's
file
good,
system.
right, it's good to hear about a potential
Just
competitor.
let me finish saying that our planning is for the new system to also to install GPFS. Sorry to say so, but we really had no other choice, and on 2 major reasons. The first one is more and more users are not only running on one of the supercomputers, but they're running on both. That they do the high scaling work on the blue gene side and do some other work on the other side. And they really hated to copy their files from GPFS to Lustre and vice versa. And that is the major reason, so we really had no other choice. And the second one is what I just explained, the declustered rate features in GPFS and the end-to-end integrity.
So that is a special situation because one of the architectures you have just didn't give you any alternative. But you know, end of life for some of that hardware is already pretty visible, it appears. So then the question comes again whether we go to a more open system. Thomas, your comments, looking back.
Looking back at the speaker ahead of me, I don't know whether this will make me nervous or not, because last year what we had to do was a procurement to replace the computer that we currently have. So currently we have an IBM with GPFS, 6 petabyte on disk on a pretty small machine with 150 teraflops. We fell off the top 500 list last year. And we had a procurement last year, and we signed a contract in May, and we will have a bull machine and a Xyrotex installation, a Xyrotex Lustre installation. So the procurement was made as follows. We said we need a 45 petabyte disk file system, and we have 26 million euro. How much computer do we get for the rest of the money? And in the end, Bull was the winner of that, so we will have approximately, this is a 2-phase installation, so we'll install 15 petabyte by January next year, another 30 petabyte by January 2016, and we will install approximately 1 petaflop in 2015 and another 2 petaflops in 2016. So altogether 3 petaflop, 45 petabyte. Moving from GPFS to Lustre, having also a huge tape library. Currently it has, well, when we started it was in the range, but let's say now with LTO5 it's in the range of 100 petabyte that we can store there on LTO5, and we currently have more than 30 petabyte on disk. Usually we archive more than 8 petabyte per year. And it will go up by a considerable factor of maybe almost 10. So we'll see how the transition will work. We are excited about that, of course. Have a new file system then by next year. We are thinking positively, obviously.
What version will you use? The file system?
I don't know whether this was listed. Julian, do you remember that? The latest one, I guess. The version?
I don't remember.
Yeah.
12 years ago we did.
Torben, you are a member.
Well, since I designed the system, I should know what we actually intend to run on that. We will be running Lustre 251 or 252, depending on how well the recompilation and test of that code will go, but it's definitely going to be a full-fledged 2.5 with a lot of DNEs. We're still discussing when we will implement the HSM solution as well, since all this tape in the back end, it would be a shame not using it for good back end, etc. And then we're working on a number of, I wouldn't call it custom solutions, but projects on enhancing some of the data management tools that would obviously benefit.
So in a year, we will be asking the same question, saying, did it
We
work?
will then have the first experiences.
Right. And now let's shift to the interesting question, what would you like, what is missing, what doesn't work, right? So Thomas, there's little you can say at the moment, but Klaus, here you have at least, the original key developers lined up, you have the big site, so you have also, and don't talk about GPFS again, no. But you have experience, of course, with those alternatives and choices. What would you like to see? And then hand it over, the mic over to Hendrik, because it's the same question, and then to Steve. What would you like to see? What are features? And then we will also include the audience here and say, what would you like to see? What is missing? What could we do better? Klaus.
Okay, I think the most important thing in our shop is that we have to use the storage subsystem. Not only on one computer, but on several computers in our shop. Not only on the two supercomputers, but also on smaller systems. For instance, we have an own visualization system, which also have to have access to the storage file system. And up to now, it seemed to us that Luster is not able to do this, that we share with several different supercomputers the Luster file system. And maybe that's possible. Okay, I just can say this, our experience was there with the non-Luster system. Say the name again. Okay. And our trust was stronger in this side than others. I think that's the most important thing.
Hendrik.
Well, I would say that we do mount the Luster system on lots of different machines. It's entirely possible as long as there's a network between them. A fast network, preferably. I would say, but for the same reason, a native re-export of the file system to NFS assets would be a very nice feature to have, because lots of our users feed the system from other systems. The originally entering the files from other sites and so on often happens through a re-export on NFS assets. So something native supporting that would be very nice. The UID that Stephen mentioned would be very nice to get as well. And I know it's not going to happen, but an extension of 1.8 would also be very nice.
Yeah, what I'm hearing is, this is very interesting. There's this old saying, never change a running system. That is what Klaus mentioned before, is that we won't touch it. Yeah. But what is the reason that you actually remain at 1.8 instead of moving to 2.x?
I think part of that is because we do our own support and do everything ourselves. So there's going to be a bit of re-education before we get there.
But ultimately, you will migrate.
We will migrate.
You will migrate.
Possibly for mandated by hardware, possibly mandated by the new possibility of offloading some of the data to object storage that DDM mentioned was it 2 days ago? We've been looking into that one.
To migrate data to
from OSTs to a separate object storage.
let me just ask the, look at you, Stephen, because you already did development and you mentioned also some features. So let me ask Aurélien, because you, as a user, not as a developer, are there features you would like for the larger sites? You represented the real big sites here, or is there additional stuff that would actually fulfill some of the requirements? And then I hand it back to Brent, because you need to comment on the future roadmap and to what extent Luster will do what they'd like it to do. Aurélien.
Usually this kind of question I answer, I talk about new features which were lacking for, I think, for a long time in Luster, and I've seen very positive signs recently regarding new features that have been introduced in Luster, and also projects that are on the way, which will enable very interesting new feature. We talked previously about layout lock, which is, I think, sponsored by ZFS. This feature by itself will not bring something new, but it will offer us the possibility to add a lot of other new feature. And this is things that I think we like to have, like replication, internal migration, internal space rebalancing, this kind of things would be really interesting. And this is things that we've never been so close of this kind of thing. We're talking about this for years now, and that's really good that there is things on the way for that. And other things which is not, I don't think that somebody is working on this, it's more very fine-grained internal policies in Austria.
And Brent, here, you are the person I've seen most often to present the Luster roadmap and the list of features. So,
Well, there's a shared roadmap between EOFS and OpenSFS, and
Right.
it goes out for the next year or two. So there's a shared roadmap between the community groups, EOFS and OpenSFS, that's published by OpenSFS. I'm not sure if it's on the EOFS website, so you can go to the OpenSFS website and you can see what features are coming. One of the facts about Luster is that doing kernel development takes a lot longer than doing user space development. And so we have to map these features out well in advance, and so everybody knows what's coming with Luster over the next year or two by going to that source.
does the roadmap fulfill the requirements, to what extent? And add-on question, and Brent, of course, you need to comment on it. Does the process work, let's say, feeding requirements from the user community to the core developers, specifically Intel and now Seagate?
I know the roadmap, there's interesting things in it, but I mean, that's not everything I need, but I know this is not so simple, just having people think, okay, it would be nice to have this and this and this. And I know it takes time, it's not so easy to develop this, and eventually you need money also to develop this kind of thing. So there is not all the things I would like to see in this roadmap, but I know why they are not there. And I know it's not so easy to put them in. So.
Yeah, I'm of course, the purpose of this panel is not to discuss individual features, those are just examples, but the key question is the process. Is that well established? And let me also open it up to the audience here on who is using Luster. Well, I would say to Sir Obet. Anybody wants, someone who wants to comment on it? Is the process of adding features, of feeding requirements into the roadmap, is that visible to you? And are you satisfied with it?
Can I comment? I mean, provided.
Absolutely.
Okay. Putting on my OpenSFS hat, and sort of, I guess, underscoring what Hugo and I have been talking about. There is a technical working group as part of OpenSFS. This is where we gather requirements. I feel that EOFS, OpenSFS are absolutely crucial to moving Lustre forward. We would love to see participation from each and every one of you, because we would like to know what features you would like to see so that we can write proposals and present those to the board and say, dear board of OpenSFS, these are the things that are crucial to our environment. These are the things that we would like to push forward. So with appropriate participation from the community, and some of that is financial, we can request and push those features. I mean, I think that we've been fortunate to this point to have the kind of involvement that we have had, to fund and push forward things like distributed namespace. As I said before, these 4 design projects, they didn't just come from the board. Okay, these were requirements that were gathered from the community, and features that people perceive that they need. Making a left turn for just a moment. The other piece of this is testing. New features are lovely. We want new features. We want to be able to compete with GPFS. But again, and this is a plug for testing, we would love to have your involvement, because not every use case can be triggered.
And the nice thing here is that you actually did exactly and commented on exactly what would have been. My next question here, what is the role and the value of those organizations, EOFS and OpenSFS? And what becomes apparent here is that basically becoming an interface between the user community and the developers, something like a coordination instance that future maybe comes up with and maintains a prioritized list of requirements, discusses that internally, and I'd like to use this opportunity to encourage you all to either join OpenSFS, depending on where you are, or EOFS, or both if appropriate, right? Because this is, a community or communities, or those associations only live if there's a real good reason and if there's value. So we covered basically all the points I have listed here, so I think it's a very positive sign. Are there specific questions from the audience to the panelists? Then you have an opportunity to ask those right now. Hugo.
I have a question, just a very short one, coming back to the statements about GPFS in this field, and I just wanted to ask you, Torben, again, because we had that discussion before the breakfast panel. You saw some problems. You saw some potential problems coming up for GPFS. We can discuss that in this environment. After IBM gave up the x86 business and handed it over to Lenovo, and you mentioned some potential, let's say, risk, or let's say at least potential outcome of that for the file system. Could you repeat that, please, and maybe have a short discussion on it?
Right, so I've been in this marketplace for a long time, some before Cyrus, now Seagate, etc. A number of the customers I've been working with all over Europe have been, I would call it, fairly staunch supporters of GPFS as the solution. with the exception of Hewlett, that I never seem to be able to budge. No matter what I do, they always do their own thing. I've actually had a very interesting set of conversations over the last 2 months when at least 3 or 4 of those strongholds that have been doing GPFS have called me and says, I've had it with IBM, that pricing is all over the map, it's going to be too expensive, we need to move to Lustre ASAP. Can you help us? And these are customers where I've been knocking on the door every year, and a chance of getting a foot in the door this year, and it's been slammed in my face every single time. Friendly slams, but still. Now they open the doors because they are in desperate need of help, because IBM seems to be suddenly without the means to subsidize their software licensing with hardware. Now they need to actually make ends meet on just selling software, which is, for a complex file system like GPFS, sold with Lustre 2 by the way, a very expensive proposition. So it's interesting to see the change. So while I think GPFS competition in the marketplace, whether it's from GPFS or any of the other file systems here, is good. I'd like to see it being on a more even playing field where it's features and open source rather than cost that actually plays in, which is kind of the thing. So, as I said, the main change has only happened in the last 2 months, and I have had discussion with my US colleagues, and they see the same thing in the US. So there is a trend change here, and obviously not every customer out there has enormous budgets of Klaus over here for buying IBM licenses. But that said, I think that there's a change coming, big change. And
John, thanks. I have to cut the discussion here because we have 2 other panelists. We would like now, and also given the fact that there are no other comments from the audience. So the first one is Franz Freund, and now let's have not only a discussion but a statement from your side about what is a short one, what is the frown of the file system, and you don't need to do a marketing job, you don't want that to happen, but what are the key differences?
You want to give me...
Yes, you have the chance to use
You
your
told me
slides.
before the discussion that I should present something.
You don't need to introduce the organization. What the audience wants to know, of course, is where it's different. Because at the end, the market will tell, we probably will see a couple of alternatives. One might be simpler or easier to implement, but at least we should know. And
Yeah, I think the first difference is
GFS has gained popularity.
the first difference is that we work on a much lower budget. Okay, if there's no cable, then I talk without the cable.
Okay, so just...
Yeah, I think the file system now called BGFS, we have to change the name from Fraunhofer file system to BGFS. And we did another split that we have the sales and support.
You need to use the microphone.
Okay. That we have the sales and support split to a spin-off where all the development and research is done at Fraunhofer. So what are the main differences? I think we started from fresh, from a blank white sheet of paper 10 years ago, and we had at that time experience with Lustre already.
We were fully aware of Lustre already.
Yeah, we were fully aware of Lustre. We did actually a lot of work with it. We did fix some bugs and did a lot of work and moved really commercial software on top of it. So we had some experience, and we thought we should do some things different. And a few things where we started with the first distributed metadata, really scalable distributed metadata from the very beginning. Said no kernel patches at all. So we have a kernel module for the client, and the servers, the metadata server and the storage server are user-space programs that don't interfere. And this has a huge impact, first on the development, secondly on the flexibility how you can use the file system. So it runs on top of any underlying system, like CFS, like EXT, like XFS, like ButterFS, whatever you want to, even PMPFS if you like. So you can do lots of nice things. So for that reason, we see, for example, lots of downloads from the Amazon cloud directly. They install and use it over there. So it's very flexible to use. You can do a variety of things with it. The other thing we started from the very beginning with this was clear we have multi-core chips in the future. And so it's a really scalable multi-threaded architecture. So it uses all the cores available on the CPUs. And that leads to a really lightweight implementation at the end, which doesn't cause a lot of load on the servers. So this offers you option for many, and many use that way, to run the server, the metadata server, and even the client on the same machine. You can do compute on the nodes which you use for storage. That's certainly not very useful in the HPC domain, but it's useful to create an on-demand file system across your cluster on a per job basis, that users have a very fast file system directly attached to their nodes, and you remove it when the job is done. So the stage in, stage out you can do, and you have a really very good offering for the users. We are using this since a while, really with SSDs and all the nodes. So you have tons of gigabytes per second in the nodes, and you remove everything. So even a crash of the SSD is not an issue at that moment, since it's just for temporary use. These are flexibilities that are introduced by the way we have developed the file system as a scalable multi-threaded architecture.
That sounds very, very positive and interesting. So let's assume I download, I'm a site, a small site, download the BGFS, and I run into some issues. I can't fix them, I don't understand them. What about support?
I think I should continue with one more two things. The other thing is network support, then I come to the support. So we started as well with having two networks connected, like native InfiniBand and Ethernet, and a dynamic failover between both. So and we see quite often that InfiniBand goes down in the machine, and so then the Fraunhofer system dynamically switches over to Ethernet. So people still can see their data, it has lower performance, but still can see their data when InfiniBand is back, it moves back. And this is fully automatic without any user interaction. Coming to support, this was our main goal for the very beginning, have it easy to install and maintain. And my first requirement was I should be able to install it in half an hour on the two laptops on my table, and I did. We had a talk earlier this year in Spain by one of our resellers there. He said he did a 15-minute install during a talk in his conference. So at the installation at the Barcelona Supercomputer Center. So these are points which we took very serious from the very beginning to make it easy to install and maintain. And this has a lot to do with software quality. So we focus on performance and software quality from the very beginning. I think this is a lot easier when you have a very small developer group than when you have 150 developers which you have to organize, different organizations. So focus on performance and quality and not on features. Although over the time we have added now, I think most of the features that our users wanted, and we continue to do so.
Thanks, Franz. I think that sounds...
Support is given by Fraunhofer. It's a third level support, and so far I should say our users are quite happy with our support. That's more a question to the users. You shouldn't ask me.
Anybody here who has experience with BGFS? Any comments on what Franz just said?
I'm working at the data center of the Technical University of Kaiserslautern, and we use at our cluster. Thank you. We use at our cluster Elbitridge, the file system of the Fraunhofer Gesellschaft. And I'm quite new at the data center. I started in March, so my experience is not so deep. But we are very happy up to this day. Excuse me, I'm very nervous. One thing we experienced is a problem, I think, which is a problem of all parallel file systems, to my knowledge, and it's small file performance, you know. Excuse me. We have some kind of software which produces many large files in a few seconds, and it brings down the performance of the whole parallel file system, and that's a problem for the whole cluster. And I would like to hear some words. What are possible solutions for the small file problem? And I mean millions of small files.
Millions. That is an interesting question. Unfortunately, you know, our time is about to be up here. It's a very, very interesting question. That question came up also in Luster communities, how to manage applications that produce a huge amount of smaller files. I have to basically defer that question to other opportunities because we would like to use, and I thank you for those comments. So you see suddenly also the Fraunhofer BGFS file system is sometimes facing challenges, and my conclusion is over time, within the associations here, we may see, specifically addressing EOFS, we may actually come up with, let's say, a comparison of the features and benefits, the pluses and minuses, because it's always good to have alternatives. I'd like to come to the closing remarks in terms of panelists here, and pleased to have Julia Kunkel here, who will say a few words about future projects, not directly related to those file systems. There's a project called E10. Very few have heard about it, so Julia.
But first I will respond to some of the questions and some of the discussions.
Absolutely.
And first of all, I want to mention that in the past few years I just seen that a lot of projects emerged that actually deal and try to come over with the current file system paradigm, as you mentioned, because that's a limitation. So we see, for example, the DSSD project, we have the Fast and Forward project, and we had some, of course in the past, we had also a lot of different projects, but they had been mere PhD projects. But now we have really, I think, multi-million-dollar funded projects because the community realizes we cannot go on with our concepts, that we have them. And I just want to mention a few things. So we figured out we have to have an alternative to POSIX. We want to add some features like machine learning because we don't want to deal with all this parameterization of the file systems anymore. It's so a huge effort to tune it right for every application. And that adds to the second point. If you look at the user perspective, I found it really funny. A lot of people say here they are representing the users, but actually you're discussing features like, okay, we need, this replication and stuff like that. Actually, if I would be a user, I just would care about my data should be safe, right? So I am taking actually this kind of perspective because what we miss here, and that was my question, is there somebody from the middleware layers like HDFS and NetCDF, because I consider these to be actually finally the users of file systems? Is somebody here? No, and that's exactly what I expected. Because I think what we need are the people that are actually doing the I/O, getting involved with the file system people to make the products they want. Okay, this is my second remark. So what we see.
There's a little misunderstanding. What the group I position as users here is not the scientist sitting at a terminal who says, yes, my data should be safe. The users are the sites.
Yeah, no, it's fine.
They're using Cluster.
But maybe then the point is maybe I'm more like a user looking to you when you see my presentation, because I'm really showing you what I think, what we think should be there. So just want to add, why are these new software packages coming up in these experimental file systems and storage systems and all these things? They are coming up because people realize they want to change their workflows. They don't want to just deal with this multi-million files, and SSD, by the way, is a project to come over with these multi-million files.
Focus on E10.
All right. So all these things, they come up, and yeah, I just will show you what are the deficiencies in the current I/O system. And I think in this talk, I mean, we know there are a lot of different access paradigms. People use POSIX, of course, they use HD5, but we also see big data stuff. We heard yesterday a nice talk from Matsuoka about the conversions of big data and parallel file systems, and exactly that's what E10 is also about. So, and we lose a lot of semantic information when we go through the layers. So ultimately, what is the real user doing is lost because we have just an array of, bytes. I mean, how could we potentially extract the information and optimize an array of bytes? It's really a tough question from the file system perspective. So maybe it's time to rethink that. And a lot of features are replicated across the stack. We have it I found HDF5 really funny because it's a file system inside a file put on side of file system and stuff, right? Finally, what we get, we lose a lot of performance by this re-implementation, and we have the problem to port our applications to different systems because we have to optimize all the middleware layers for all the different systems again and again. We have a lot of data models, as I said, POSIX file. You might want to have structured access, NoSQL. It's really difficult for the user to pick the right one. I now see people that actually store data with HD5, then they convert it multiple times. Is it actually needed? Well, we hide a lot of information from the file system, the data types, the semantics. How do we access it concurrently? What is the value of our data, the data lifecycle, and so on? We could use that information to do a lot of things. Storage system, and middleware, if we would have that information. Finally, we have to tweak our file system in many ways, right? There's so multitude of things to do. We are faced as a user, if we don't do it, we lose a lot of performance, so we are forced, unfortunately, to do it. So now, my critical perspective on if I would be a user, and I am a user often, why do I have to deal with file formats? End user, yes. I'm a user storing data somewhere. So why do I have to organize the file format? Right? It's really like, I like to point out here, it's like taking care of the memory out of C structs. Do we want to do that in our C program? No. Why should I do it on the storage? Why do I have to convert my data between the storage paradigms? I want to dump an HD5 file and access it with SQL, maybe, to query stuff and do some aggregation, average values. Now there are a lot of tools in different communities doing exactly the same thing, pulling stuff maybe from HD5, doing some aggregation across it. Why do we have this replication of features if the storage system could do a better job? Hadoop solves that, pushing some information back on the storage servers, doing the computation. That's why it was so, I think, successful. And if I look for my experiments I've done in the, let's say, months before, I may be looking for certain properties I've done with this experiment, this model, and so on. I just want to look it up. I don't want to think about my directory structure, right? It's like the MP3 stuff. I just pull it into any folder, and I can look for the artists and stuff. I don't have to care. But here it's still like, Jurassic Park, so to say. It's really ancient technology here. And I have to provide a lot of this system-specific performance hints. It's really, like I point out here, it's like unrolling. For this system, I have to unroll the loop 4 times, please. This system, please unroll it 2 times. This is exactly what I wanted, right, for my system. Perfect.
Last slide.
Yeah, right, it's the last slide. Okay, why is not the consistency model there? I wanted, and I would rather focus on coding my application if I would be a scientist, by the way. And now what is E10, right? That allows us to seamlessly use the technology and storage systems that are out there, deploy it, gain incremental benefit while it gets mature and improved, therewith overcoming the limitations of the current architecture, making it data type aware, that allows us to have multiple views on the same data, as I said, dump it as HD5, looking at SQL on it, focusing on guided interfaces instead of providing technical hints that are not portable, not taking care about data formats anymore, because that ultimately allows us to do multi-tiering in a much seamless, easier way, where you put parts of a file onto one storage and another part on another type of storage, do intelligent monitoring, embed in the system, optimize it, perform what-if analysis with simulation approaches, integrate, of course, active storage concepts, and do all the post-processing that is now done in all the different communities by themselves. Just let them handle by the file system, which can integrate in the workflow where the CPU and storage, let's say, resource can be used best. It's a huge effort to redefine and define this design in a big community, I would say, and we, of course, involve all these bigger projects and try to get feedback from them to really build something that is more than a PhD.
Yes.
Project. Okay,
time
good.
is up.
Yep, thanks. We have a first draft available, thanks.
This was a very, very high baud rate, and one of the highest, and you had so many features and so many issues it will solve. I would just add, it appears it can also cure incurable diseases. No, but I really thank you, because I wanted to make also those additional developments visible. It's time to come to a close. We are lucky that nobody showed up to kick us out here, so we overrun a little bit. I'd like Hugo to come up with the closing remarks. And of course, Stephen as well. And from my point, my desk, I'd say thank you very much.
Before I do 3 announcements, let me first of all thank you very much for coming as early birds to this breakfast meeting. I think my feeling is it was worth. The discussion was quite interesting, and we could learn what the participants really have in mind and what they did the last year and what is maybe still missing and what's coming up. Then I would like to thank the panelists very much, that they are open to all that discussion and coming to that vibrant meeting with all the different possibilities between user needs and developers' wish list. And finally, my thank goes to Frank, who again was offering his help for the moderation. Thank you, Frank. I think this would not be the kind of vibrant discussion if you would not have taken over that position. Thank you very much. And finally, the announcement. We have an E10 off in this same room at 11 a.m. this morning. So if you're interested to learn more what Julian said, please show up at 11 or just stay here. The second is we will have the LAD, the Luster Administrator and User Group, from September 22nd to 23rd in Reims. Thank you very much, Aurélien, and also best regards to Jacques, and thank you for all that preparation. So I hope you will all come to that event. And the final one is, I just learned this morning, not yet solved, from Steve, will be the jointly OpenSFS and EOFS Luster User Group meeting next year in April. Maybe you can say something about that. It, of course, will be around April, I think, and there's also an idea about a city. Again, thank you very much, and now I would like to hand over to my friend and partner, Steve Sims, for the final wording and goodbye to the audience. Thank you.
Thanks, Hugo. I just want to reiterate a lot of what Hugo said. Thanks so much for being here. I mean, having your thoughts, ideas, your input. Call me. I'd love to have you guys on, the Community Development Working Group. We really want to hear what our partners in EOFS are thinking, what they would like to see. Luster User Group meeting is going to be likely in April. We're looking at Denver. I think Denver is the likely candidate at this point. It would be great to see you guys there. And even more, as I said before, submit some abstracts. Tell us what you're doing. we don't want the Lustre user group to be the Lustre vendor group, but you know, we have a shortage of abstracts from smaller sites who are doing really interesting work. We need to strengthen this community, and the way to do that is through participation. I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here. I'm very grateful that we have such a strong relationship with EOFS. Thank you all. And as I say in my country, that's in my personal country, rock on.